for checking out the Sportsline Podcast here on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. As we always like to say in these parts, if you can make it in Canada, you can make it anywhere on the world stage. For 137 years, the America's Cup has been recognized as the pinnacle of sailing. For the first time in all of those years, starting on October the 5th, this weekend in Barcelona, there will be a Women's America's Cup competing for their very own trophy. Just as pleasing, the 12-nation competition will include Canada. The Concord Pacific Racing Team is representing this nation at the world's oldest active competition, and Vancouver native Isabella Bertold is the skipper. The two-sport veteran, who's also a top-level cyclist, began sailing in Vancouver at the age of 5 and has continued her passion, ranking number 2 in the world in the laser radial class and later competing with the Canadian National Sailing Team. There have been a number of highlights during Isabella's career, but establishing a women's sailing foundation with the mission of competing at the America's Cup is coming true. Isabella, you're coming to us all the way from Barcelona. You're just days away from the competition, and it is wonderful to have you on the Sportsline Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and really awesome timing. We just got in off the water for our last practice day, and so now we have a couple days off before racing kicks off for us on Sunday.
You know, I'm going to be really completely honest with you. I had no idea. I had just assumed, and really this is why we shouldn't assume things, that the women were always competing in the America's Cup. I did not know that there was, I guess, a perceived sort of gender bias, maybe not on purpose, but that's what has happened over the last century or so. So this is a historical event that is happening starting this weekend, and the fact that you're involved and Canada is involved is just so thrilling and exciting.
Yeah, you know, you touched on something there of we assume that there are women competing, and there's no reason why women shouldn't be competing already at the America's Cup. But for some reason, there is just a bit of gender bias, and it's taking its time. And so this first sort of next step in the evolution of women's sailing, of an all-women's team competing against another all-women's team out on the water for their own America's Cup, it's going to change the game of professional sailing for women, and not just our current generation, but particularly the next few generations behind us.
Well, I don't know if the world's ready for it, but you got big-time sponsors. You have 12 countries in competition, 6 of them that have already competed in America's Cup, 6 invitees. This is going to be an outstanding competition, pitting the very best. And what an unbelievable setting in Barcelona.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, it was a little bit rainy today, but the wind was incredible. We've had spectacular conditions here, and the forecast for the event is really great as well. So I expect really fast and close racing. It's definitely worthwhile tuning in.
How long have you been in the works to make this happen, at least for a Canadian team to be competing?
Yeah, so all the way back in the fall of 2022 is when things really got put in motion. It was earlier in 2022 where there was an idea that Canada should put an entry in. We weren't quite sure how we were going to make that happen. And then it was October of 2022 that we sent off the paperwork and applied for a spot. So there's only 6 invited nations. And it's quite competitive to be one of the invited nations. And so we were lucky enough to be selected. And then the team trials already were off and going in November of 2022. So it's been quite a path for us to get here.
I guess people would ask what the skipper responsibilities are and what you've had to go through, not only just on the water, but off the water as well.
Yeah, so I hold actually, so I'm the skipper and I'm also the team principal. So I have added responsibility, and that not only am I responsible for what happens out on the water, but also off the water. Definitely leading all of the fundraising, corporate relationships, putting the team together, the logistical side of it. All of that falls on me. And then when you get out on the water, the skipper is really the leader on the boat, or you could maybe sort of the captain of the boat is a way to put it. And so with that also comes the responsibility of safety on board. And then also a lot of the sort of the key decision makings around the race course do fall on me as well.
I mean, this is an amazing responsibility that you have tasked yourself with. Now, I'll tell you, obviously, we've had the likes of the Olympics that just came through and bypassed the Paralympic Games as well, to the World Rowing Championships just came through our area right here in St. Catharines just a couple of weeks ago. When I look at women on the water, where is our level on the world stage at this point?
Yeah, actually, I'd say some of Canada's top sailors are all female sailors. If you look at the last few Olympic cycles, it's Canadian female sailors that are leading the way for Canadian sailing and really setting the bar. And we have some of the best sailors in the world. I mean, our boat is full of sailors that have had top 5 performances at the World Championships in their respective Olympic classes. Both myself and Georgia Lewin-Lafrance, who's on the women's team, have experience racing at Sail GP, which is another fast boat racing league. We've got an incredibly competitive team, and I'm really excited for the racing to get going to see how we do.
I have to ask you the obvious question. We've done so well as a nation and had women like yourself that have fallen in love with the sport on various levels, whether it be paddling, rowing, fast boat racing like yourself. Why did this take so long for this to happen, just in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think change takes time, and we have also seen the boats really evolve over the last 15 years. So looking back at boats that were being raced 25, 30 years, they were quite physical. And I mean, if you weren't 6 foot tall and at least sort of 180, 190 pounds, if not stronger than that, you couldn't actually sail on the boat. You just weren't strong enough and physically big enough to do a lot of the things. And so as the boat design has changed more to this fast foiling style of boat, the physical element is gone. We just push buttons, and it's a lot more like driving a Formula One car in terms of the loads that you're experiencing as a driver. And so it's leveled the game in that sense. And now it's about building the skill set and opening more opportunities for women to race alongside men on the same boat.
You must be a broadcaster, because you just took the words right out of my mouth of where I was going next here. Because I'll be honest, as I dig deeper into what you will be doing, the competition, again, call me Old Man River here. I was looking at old sailing boats. This AC-40 is something incredible. The boat is technically, for those, and we're going to show some video here, it's not really on the water. And can you explain to us how this works? I believe it's called foils. Isabella, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So what you're seeing there on the video, and so the boat is flying over the water. So basically the easiest way of thinking about it is think of an F1 car meeting Top Gun on the water. So you've got the drivers are actually controlling the foils, which operate much like airplane wings. So there's flaps that we're controlling and various different settings to help the boat actually fly. And then the sails are set up slightly differently as well, and giving people more controls. And we're hitting speeds of, downwind when we're sailing away from the wind. If we're not going 80 kilometers an hour, we're going a little bit slow. So we're really pushing speeds in these small boats. And it almost feels like a bit of a go-kart when we're racing around the track now. And they're super fun. And but you're flying over the water. You're not sailing in the water anymore.
Because you weren't growing up on boats like this, what kind of adjustment has it been for you and many on your team?
Yeah, it's just, I think sailing is already very physics heavy when you're sort of understanding what's happening to the wind over the sails and over the boat. And so it was just applying a lot of the things we already knew to a new concept of flying. But I think like anything, once you get it figured out, then it just feels like normal sailing to us now. I think steep learning curve at the beginning, and we've got a pretty good handle on it now.
Formula One drivers, they actually have simulators, and I have seen that you guys do some work in the sim room, and I guess all the factors are put into a computer, and you can actually operate the sailboat from a seat.
Yeah, exactly. So we've spent hundreds of hours on the simulator over the past year. And very similar to Formula One drivers, we are in the simulator in the morning before going out racing. the simulator gets set to the conditions that we're expecting, just so that we can go through our functions and test different things. But yeah, it's very similar in that I'd say our primary training tool has been the simulator, especially because we don't actually own one of these boats, so our time on the water has been very limited.
So when you're in the boat, it's you and 3 others, I'm presuming?
Yes, 4 people total, correct.
And are you communicating with each other, or is just one person tasked with a responsibility?
Oh, no, there is so much communication between the sides. So the sails actually, when they're up and when you're sailing, you can't see from one side of the boat to the other. So you are fully relying on what the other person on the other side is doing. And so there's 2 drivers and 2 people trimming the sails, and the 2 drivers share everything. So as the boat turns through the wind, they're passing the wheel off from one person to another. So communication is super key. And if you see a close-up of any of our helmets, it looks like almost like a fighter jet plane setup, where we've got microphones in our super close to our mouths, helmets, goggles on. And yeah, so that's how we communicate to each other across the boat.
They're incredibly beautiful machines. There's a shot of the helmets right there. That's amazing to me. I would imagine when you're going, 50, 60 knots like this, there's an element of danger.
Yeah, there definitely is, and the margin error is not very great. It doesn't take much to make a little mistake, and the boat is in the water. So yeah, there's definitely we're very aware of the risk, and I have to say that I think it's something that makes it so fun as well, and has drawn a lot of us back to sailing to compete in this.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part about it, too. And it's funny because we look at video like we've just looked at, but that's like one boat just out there. You will be competing against 3 and 4 other boats as well, too, at the same time, all looking to complete your course. It's amazing to see what the teamwork that all has to come together and actually winning a race. Now, I want to look back a little bit in your career as well, too. April 2024, a memorable first victory for you at Christchurch, New Zealand. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, whenever you have the chance to be the first at something, it makes it a little bit more special. That moment also was quite surreal. Heading into that event was not an ideal buildup for the team. And so for us to come back and actually race as well as we did in Christchurch in some really difficult conditions was really special. And yeah, definitely a memorable moment to get that win.
And I believe you were the lone woman on that team?
Yes, that is correct. So in the SailGP teams, it's actually part of the rules that you have to have one female on board. And so each of the teams has one female sailor on board.
What would you have learned from that? Because I believe that's a different boat, is it not?
Yes, it's a different boat, but the style of racing is very similar. So unlike Olympic sailing, where the courses are quite big, these fast foiling boats race on boundary courses. So there's boundaries on either side that you cannot go outside of. So the tactics and strategy are a little bit different, and lucky enough to have some really experienced sailors on board the Canadian team there. And I've definitely taken a lot forward from my experience with that team into this program.
I'm going to go a little further back, summer of 2022, Plymouth, England. And we just talked about danger. You slipped overboard during practice?
Yeah, it was just, it was basically a fast maneuver, a fast turn. And there was actually, I just sort of fell over, but we're tethered in, so not that big of a deal. But there's another sailor on board as well that went for a nice little send around the front of the boat as well, but stayed on board. So yeah, I mean, things can go wrong all the time, but you have a good sense of humor about it and just move on.
Yeah, I read about that, and I was like, all I could think about was like, oh my goodness, that's frightening. My goodness, especially in it's not Lake Ontario, right? It's a big open water, fast moving. It's amazing to me. Let's go to what we're going to be looking forward to. First of all, I think we need to bring this up to, for any of this to happen and what's going to happen on the women's side here at the Women's America's Cup, and in particular the Canadian team that you will be leading, having sponsorship is just unbelievably critical for anything to happen, and you guys have been very fortunate.
Yeah, we've been incredibly lucky with the support of Corporate Canada, Concord Pacific really leading the way, Telus, RBC, and Dilawri as well. Without them, we wouldn't be here. And also just in terms of our ability to spread the message and the significance of this event being the first ever Women's America's Cup, to be working with values-aligned partners that are really helping us push and grow the female aspect of the sport. It's been incredible, and I feel so fortunate to have them involved with our program.
How tough was it for you to select a team?
It was so tough that I actually didn't make the final selections. I was really lucky to have coaches that had to do that job, and I think they were happy that they had a lot of data to look at, because it's never easy, and it took probably the final 6 months was just narrowing down the team from 10 to 5, it's a really hard thing, and you definitely build friendships, relationships, and at the end of the day, everybody that did trial for the team was a fantastic sailor and could have been on the boat. So it was not an easy decision, and lucky that I didn't have to make those final cuts.
Well, I'm sure even the people the women that did not make the team, they could be your strongest support staff as well too going forward. Now, I know that Canada, as everything we do, we're in it to win it. Relatively new to this, but how will Canada fare? And obviously, this is again, I guess, especially on the women's side, a big build to the future.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're underdogs, and that's okay. We're owning that. We love it. We're going to go out and race really hard. But I don't know, it's kind of fun sailing when you have a little bit less pressure on you. So we're the underdogs coming into this. But if practice racing today was any sign, then I think it's going to be pretty close, and tune in and expect some pretty great things from Canada. And we'll be racing knowing we've got the country cheering us on as well, which will always help.
Well, now that we all know about this and know exactly what's going to be happening starting this weekend, what will be the teams or the nations to watch for that you would believe would be the favorites?
Yeah, so the way the racing is divided is the America's Cup teams are actually on one pool, and then there's a second pool that's just the invited teams. So we don't actually have to sail against the America's Cup teams right off the bat. So our first round of qualification is just the invited teams. And one of the teams on that side is Team Sweden, and they actually own their own AC40. And so they've been out on the water training more than a lot of the America's Cup teams. So I'm going to definitely say that they're a favorite to win the whole thing. After that, I think we are all so evenly matched, the racing's going to be really close and very exciting.
Well, you got to start somewhere, right? I think, and you're getting this underway. And as I said, it may not even be a decade from now where you guys are actually in there competing on that top level and making the country proud as well too, because you're doing that right now. I think it's important to kind of look at this as well too, because I see something, I feel something, a growth when it comes. And I've been in sports for 30, 40 years of my life on a broadcasting side, and what we're seeing now with the WHL, the WNBA, a team is going to be in Toronto next year. The Northern Super League, we had Dana Mathis on just a couple of weeks ago talking about soccer and the Northern Super League. There's a movement towards women's sports, and if it's not a movement, it's we're all recognizing, and take this the right way, how good you women really are, and that the opportunities are there now. And it is so pleasing, I guess, for someone like myself that's been in sports for so long, to see you guys getting an opportunity to prove yourselves.
Absolutely. And I think there's enough data out there now that we can look at. Women's sports is highly entertaining to watch, so fans find it very engaging. And then back on sort of a commercial side, fans of women's sports are actually, female athletes are really great influencers as well for brands. And I think that is because we do feel an ownership to be really good role models for the next generation, and to set the bar really high, and to also be an accessible athlete to the younger generation. And so not only are fans engaging with it, but there's commercial viability for the product as well. And so as long as fans keep engaging and tuning in and demanding more of the product, we're going to see women's sports continue to grow and continue to progress to be on an equal playing field with men's sports.
Someone as competitive you, I heard you on the podium say, I'm looking forward to meeting the woman that says I can be faster than me. I thought that was really good. I mean, and I think that's what the mantra is it not? You know, you're starting these baby steps right now, and someone else is going to come through the door.
Absolutely. And I can say there's so much activity happening in Canadian sailing already that I can say it probably won't take more than a couple of years for the next team of women to come through and be just as competitive as we are right now and really continue to push this program forward.
Okay, the first race is?
For us, the very first race is Sunday. And so it'll be Sunday morning back in Canada. And you can tune in live on TSN, TELUS Optic TV, and on YouTube.
We're so looking forward to it. Enjoy the experience. I'm looking forward to chatting again and understanding how your experience was and the fact that we're building on something for the future. It's just an amazing thing. Isabella, thank you so much for joining us on the Sportsline Podcast, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Folks, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And as we've just seen and heard, we love talking sports, especially with people that are breaking down barriers. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you do have something to say, please comment. You women too. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.